everybody, episode 623 of the podcast, Sweeping America, the Intertour Sports Podcast, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. It is Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. People, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is having a great day. I hope everybody is ready for what should be a quick, efficient episode of the Intertour Sports Podcast. Here is what you need to know about today's show. 2 quick topics, and we will get you out of here. We are going to open with sort of some college football coaching carousel conjecture, okay? Sunday night into Monday, there was a lot of Lane Kiffin to Auburn buzz, and not just internet message board flight tracker craziness. We are talking about legitimate reports from legitimate reporters that this thing could happen. So we're going to hit on it from all angles. What could happen, why it makes sense, why it doesn't, all that good stuff. From there, we'll take a quick break, come back, talk the big college basketball story of the day as DJ Wagner, the #1 high school player in America, has committed to the University of Kentucky. Discuss that, what it means for Kentucky, a historic class for John Calipari, and most importantly, by the way, what it means for the 2023-2024 college basketball season. Speaking of college hoops, first big set of games is tonight. Wednesday, we will do another short episode recapping the 2 big games. Kentucky plays Michigan State, and then Kansas plays Duke in the first big game of the Jon Scheyer era at Duke. So pay attention for that. Keep an eye out for that. That will be a quick Wednesday show following this quick 2-topic Tuesday show. So with that said, let's not waste any more time and get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, I'll say this. Listen, we talk college football coaching carousel, to a smaller degree, college basketball as well. But we talk college football coaching carousel a ton this time of year, September into October. And then it really ramps up in November. And I'll say this. We call it the coaching. We call it the silly season, okay, because it's silly. You don't know what to believe, what not to, reports, rumors, innuendo, message boards, etc. But what I would say is if silly season is really from when the first coach gets fired till the last one gets hired, these next 2 weeks, I believe, are about to be as silly and as crazy as any throughout the rest of the entire calendar year. The question would be, why is that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. One, the regular season, believe it or not, is coming to an end, okay? Regular season is coming to an end. The last set of games is not this coming Saturday, but the following one. And that is when we have historically seen all of the craziness, especially now that coaches are getting fired earlier in the year. What you see is usually it's that Sunday or the Monday following the regular season that all of the craziness happens, for the simple reason that all of these schools that have been open for a couple weeks or a couple months, whether it's Auburn, whether it's Nebraska, whether it's Georgia Tech, Arizona State, whoever, they've had time to do all their research. They've had time to do all their homework. Now that the regular season is over, it's go time. It's full speed ahead. But I would add this, because of the way the recruiting calendar has changed, it makes it that much more imperative that you get your guy in place ASAP. We talk about the December, early to mid-December signing day for high school recruits. That is really important. But keep in mind as well, there is a new variable. Remember, we have closed the transfer portal. Players are not allowed to enter the transfer portal during the season now. They are allowed to enter, though, the Monday or Sunday, I forget which day it is, but after the conference championship games. So in other words, you want to get your head coach in place ASAP as soon as the regular season ends. So when those portal doors come swinging open, and you just saw my hands if you're watching on YouTube, your coach can run full speed ahead and attack the portal, to quote Jim Harbaugh, with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And so really, again, that Monday and that Sunday after the season, you got to be moving. It was last year on the Sunday after the regular season that Lincoln Riley got hired at USC. It was the Monday after that Brian Kelly got hired at LSU. Both of those guys get in, close recruiting classes, have success in the portal, and you see the impact now and how quickly a coach can turn things around. So that's all a precursor. That all explains. It has nothing to do with what is really the topic of the day, though, which is that over the last 24 hours, there is a lot of Auburn and Lane Kiffin buzz picking up steam. We've talked a little bit about it. I want to take a deep dive into what we know, what we don't know, why it could be realistic, why it could not be here in the coming minutes. But what I would say is this. This is beyond just, I don't really dabble in the internet message board world, even though it's really fun to hang out in. It's fun to hang out in, but as a sort of credible media member, I don't try to dabble in it too much. This isn't just message board rumor. This is credible reporters from credible outlets that cover Auburn with some really interesting information starting Sunday night into Monday and now into Tuesday. So first of all, what are the reports that are out there? First of all, it's important to note with Auburn, they finally do have an AD in place. Remember, their AD, Allen Green, got kind of pushed out the door. He kind of quit, but he didn't really quit. He was kind of forced out in the summertime. And it took until about 2 weeks ago. But Auburn did officially get their AD in place. John Cohen came from Mississippi State, and he's moving full speed ahead. He's moving 1,000 miles an hour. And the reports are that he has targeted Lane Kiffin as his number one candidate. Now, Lane Kiffin probably isn't talking to him, but Lane Kiffin's agent, Jimmy Sexton, is probably talking to him. And both sides are kind of feeling each other out. Okay, does this make sense for Auburn? Does Auburn make sense for Lane? What can Auburn provide that Ole Miss can't? And we're going to get to that in a minute. But obviously, one, there are reports that Lane Kiffin is the top target. And two, it is that they are willing to pay top dollar to get him. Now, he might not get that Brian Kelly 10-year, $100-ish million contract. He might not get that Jimbo Fisher 10-year fully guaranteed contract. But the reports are a minimum of 7, maybe 8 years as a contract with a huge base salary of whatever it would be, $7-8 million per year. And so you can see why Auburn would be interesting to Lane Kiffin. Now, in terms of why would Auburn be interested in Lane Kiffin, I think it goes without saying, right? I don't think you need me to fully explain it. I know he's a little bit goofy. I know he's a little bit different. He does some weird stuff on social media. But the guy has come to the SEC and taken the SEC by storm. Last year, I don't think a lot of people know this, was the first time ever that Ole Miss won 10 games in a regular season in the history of their program. They won 9 multiple times, but they never won 10. And here's the crazy part. They could go back-to-back with 10-win seasons under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Never been done before. It could be done this year. They're currently sitting at 8-2 overall. Only losses at LSU, Bama, and home. They're favored this week against Arkansas. They will be favored next week at home in the Egg Bowl. So Lane Kiffin, for all his goofiness, has turned into an elite college football coach. And I think we have to start giving him credit. And I think one of the reasons that he's so appealing to Auburn is you look at the roster that he had this year, or I should really say the roster he had coming out of last year. I don't think people realize how much he lost. And so for him to rebuild this thing largely through the transfer portal, Jackson Dart at quarterback, Zach Evans, the kid Watkins at wide receiver, Michael Trigg, the tight end, the way he rebuilt this thing through the portal, you shouldn't be able to rebuild at a place like Ole Miss after the season they had last year. But he did it in large part because of the portal. And so you see he's having success on the field. He's kind of figured out this new wave of recruiting. And so the reasons that Auburn would want him are very obvious. Wins at a high level, fun offense, puts up points, can turn over a roster quickly, which for Auburn is important. Recruits his butt off. Obviously, the big story of the last few weeks, the Judkins kid that is dominating for Ole Miss as a true freshman running back. Was from the Auburn area, wanted to go to Auburn. So you see why Lane Kiffin is appealing. Now, what I do want to talk about, I think some people would probably sit there and say, and some people have asked me point blank, well, what's so appealing about Auburn? And not that Auburn's a bad job, not that Auburn's a terrible job, but is it really that much better than Ole Miss? Is it worth uprooting your whole life to go there? And so what I would say to that, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the why he should stay at Ole Miss over Auburn, why he should go to Auburn over Ole Miss. The reasons to stay at Ole Miss are pretty straightforward. He's got a great thing going. I just told you, 10 wins last year, 10 wins potentially on the table this year. The only 2 teams that he's lost to this year are both in the top 10 legitimate programs, destroying everybody, got a good thing going, and a couple other variables. One, it seems as though the folks in Oxford love him. willing to kind of, he's different. He's a little goofy, but they love him for it. They let him be him. My understanding is they don't overly kind of get their hands too in the dirt with what he's doing. They kind of let him run the football program the way that he wants. And he's also making $7 million a year. So you can see why Lane Kiffin would just say, dude, I don't care how much money Auburn offers me. I don't care how many years are on the contract. I am just going to stay here. But I do think, and we've talked about this before, there are some compelling reasons as to why Lane Kiffin would want to go to Auburn that I do think we need to discuss, and we need to be fair to the Auburn folks that are listening. One, it is a better job. Like, it's just a better job. You can't debate it. You can't argue it. In the last, 13 years, Auburn has won a national title. Auburn has played for a national title. They've done it under 2 different head coaches. I've talked about this a lot, but what is it? The last, 4 head coaches have all won the SEC West. I believe the last 5 head coaches have all won, the last guy, Pat Dye, won an SEC, even though there were no divisions at the time. But then Tommy Bowden, then Tommy Tuberville, then Gene Chizik, then Gus Malzahn, all had won a share of the SEC, an SEC West title, played for an SEC title, or in Tommy Bowden's case, had an undefeated season. So it's a better job. You can win at a higher level, and there's some other variables as well. First off, I don't know how many of you know this. Now, diehard Auburn and diehard Ole Miss fans know this because it's been a topic of conversation of late. And this could be the driving factor for Lane Kiffin to go from Ole Miss to Auburn. There is this weird quirk in Mississippi where apparently state employees can't have more than a 4-year contract. So they could offer Lane Kiffin $20 million a year at Ole Miss, but they can't offer him more than 4 years on that contract. And so again, first of all, they're not going to offer him $20 million, but beyond that, that could be a driving force in why he goes. 4 years at even $8-9 million a year is a great way to live for virtually everybody. But if you can get double that, if you can get 8 years at $10 million, if you can get an $80 million guaranteed contract over 10 years, that's hard to turn down. Fully guaranteed 10-year contract. Not saying Auburn is willing to go there, but even an 8-year fully guaranteed contract over a 4-year contract, you probably have to take it if you want to set up your kids for the rest of their lives. And then finally, and I think this stuff is important, we've talked about it, the Auburn NIL stuff is real. Listen, we live in a post-NIL world. You can fight the NIL stuff. You can hide from it. You can pretend like it doesn't exist, or you can accept that it's a reality. And I do think that Auburn is as well positioned as anybody in college football in the NIL space. We talked about it when John Cohen was hired as AD. John Cohen left Mississippi State because he just said the Auburn NIL is so much better set up to win at a higher level than Mississippi State. I'd be foolish not to go. And it's kind of the same with Lane Kiffin. The reports are they already have $13 million committed to their NIL fund. I'm sure they could get more if they need it. And so again, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to accept it or not, this is the world that we live in. And as NIL gets bigger and bigger and bigger, Auburn is going to be in position to have success at the highest level in the NIL space. And there's also the other factor of, fan support in general. Keep in mind, Lane Kiffin a few times has complained that, Ole Miss fans aren't in the stadium at kickoff. So there's a lot of variables. So it's an interesting dynamic. We don't have answers, but what is clear from reports, it is clear that Auburn's top target is Lane Kiffin for good reason. And now it just comes down to, does he want it? Does he not? And does he deem Auburn to be a place that he can win it at a higher level than Ole Miss? It'll be interesting to follow. There's obviously a few other factors, one of which it's been widely reported that a lot of people in the other part of the state of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, want Lane Kiffin to replace Nick Saban at some point in the future. So that is something else to consider. But I just bring it up because, listen, right now, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen publicly. Lane Kiffin is going to coach these last 2 games, but they play Arkansas this week. Then they play the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving Day. And so you talk about how quickly, in theory, Lane Kiffin, who has now been eliminated from the SEC championship game, they're not going to Atlanta. His regular season ends next Thursday on Thanksgiving Day, about 10 days or 8 days from as you listen. It could happen quick. Be ready. Be careful. Because I am just telling you, this is picking up steam on social media and picking up steam with reporters who cover Auburn. All right, so what I want to do, Do want to take a quick break. Do want to come back, hit on the other topic of the day. DJ Wagner, #1 high school player in America, has committed to Kentucky. What does it mean for John Calipari? What does it mean for the Wildcats? What does it mean for the 2023-2024 college basketball season? Take a quick break. Be right back. We'll get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome back our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred app. Listen, by now, you know the deal, but I love working with these guys and girls. Started in 1967 in the UK, over 1,600 shops. They have come to the U.S. and made a major splash, okay? They are the presenting sponsor of the Cincinnati Bengals, of the Denver Broncos, of the Colorado Rockies. I told you before, they also were basically the bodyguard and the muscle behind Mattress Mac during the World Series run. And that's what I love about working with Betfred, not just the big names and the organizations and the this and the that. I love that they take care of their bettors better than anybody. Mattress Mac bets with them. They travel the World Series with him. We've sent listeners of the Aaron Torres pod to VIP tailgates at the Broncos game. First pitch of the Colorado Rockies games. The Cincinnati Bengals Betfred suite is bumping, baby. We're going to try to get some of you there later this season. Stay tuned on that. So that is what I love about Betfred. They take care of their customers. And here is the special offer that they have for you. Bet 50 on any game this season. Any game this week, no matter who you like, doesn't matter, college or pro. Bet 50, get $250 in free bets, courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. You cannot get that anywhere else. Thank you to Betfred Sportsbook. They are our presenting sponsor of the Aaron Torres pod and much, much, much more. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome back Bracket Fanatics. Bracket Fanatics is the sponsor of our Aaron Torres pod NFL Pick'em Challenge. By now, you know the deal. We've worked with Bracket Fanatics for years with the NCAA tournament, but they have expanded to now include NFL football season-long brackets. And if you have not entered the Aaron Torres Pod NFL Pick'em Challenge, here's the good news. It's not too late. Go to bracketfanatics.com, join bracket name Torres, and you're automatically entered to win the great prizes that Bracket Fanatics is providing all year. Those prizes, well, we're giving out $100 weekly winners, $1,000 season-long cash prize. Last week's week 9 winner, week 10 winner, was BC Castaldo. Congratulations to BC. He's already been contacted by Bracket Fanatics. And if you have not entered, it's not too late. Enter, pick games. All you got to do is make picks. Pick those games, and when it happens, automatically enter to win $100 weekly cash prizes. And it's not too late to be entered to win the $1,000 season-long cash prize. Now, you're going to have to make up some ground, but it's not too late. You can start your own bracket with friends there, bracketfanatics.com. But to join our bracket, join bracket tab, bracket name Torres, tell them Torres sent you, bracketfanatics.com. Hey, I'm back. Good to be back. Do want to switch gears. Do want to talk a little college hoops recruiting. And we really haven't talked a ton of recruiting on this show over the last couple weeks for one very simple reason. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, there really hasn't been that much news to share. Most of the top players obviously were recruited over the last couple years. Most of the best players really did commit sometime in the spring, summer, or fall. And over the last couple weeks, as the signing period opened last week, most of the best players have signed at their school and have moved on. Not much news when the number 11 player in America commits in June and signs in October or November. So we really haven't talked a ton about it, but there was one piece of news centering around one star player that we have been waiting on for months and in some cases years that finally came to a close on Monday. That player, his name is DJ Wagner, the number 1 high school player in the class of 2023, according to 24/7 Sports. And after a long, winding recruitment that I think at 3 different points, we saw 3 different teams that we thought were going to take his commitment. 2 teams, 3 different points. I'll explain in a minute. DJ Wagner, number 1 player in America. He does commit to the University of Kentucky. And so let's give credit to John Calipari. This was not an easy recruit to close. This was not an easy recruitment in general. But he gets the number 1 player in America. He basically seals up the number 1 class in America. And I will just tell you this, one of the best commitments that he's ever gotten in terms of the work that had to go in, putting a bow on one of the best classes, a cherry on top of one of the best classes that he has ever signed at the University of Kentucky. Great day to be a Wildcat. Great day to be John Calipari. Really quickly with DJ Wagner, I think most people know the backstory. Most people know probably him as a player as well. But a 6'3", 6'4" guard, really good player. I don't think he had a great summer this year on AAU and Team USA. But the bottom line is basically as long as they've been ranking players in the class of 2023, DJ Wagner is at or near the top. 6'3" guard, can do it all, can get into the paint, makes plays for others, hits open threes, good athlete, maybe not elite athlete, but a really good player and a guy that I think is going to be able to step in next year in college basketball and contribute right away. So good win for John Calipari, but more importantly, it was a good win given the circumstances. And I think we've discussed them before, but let me just give you the 30-second rundown of what John Calipari had to go through to get this kid's commitment. Okay. So keep in mind, so this kid's name, DJ Wagner, I think you're probably a Kentucky fan. If you're watching, you know the backstory, but I bring it up to say that this is the son of DeJuan Wagner, who was John Calipari's first big recruit at Memphis. And so when I said there were 3 different times where we thought 3 schools were in the lead, the first was that forever we thought John Calipari in Kentucky, it was a done deal. Don't even bother recruiting him. His dad played at Memphis for John Calipari. He's been around Kentucky basketball essentially since John Calipari got there. His dad's brought him to camps up there, all that good stuff. It's a done deal. Don't even bother recruiting him. Well, then Louisville hired Kenny Payne, the new head coach, and Kenny Payne hired his grandfather, Milt Wagner, who is a former teammate of his at the University of Louisville. And so you talk about, family ties here. You have a dad who played for John Calipari. You have a grandfather coaching alongside, and I know he's in an alumni relations role, so he's not technically a coach, but coaching alongside his best friend at that school's biggest rival. And so basically you had a Hatfields and a McCoys kind of deal going on between Louisville and Kentucky, specifically pulling the 2 sides of the family, whether it would be to go play for the coach who coached dad DeJuan Wagner or go play for the grandfather Milt Wagner. And for a long time, it looked like Louisville was in control. Kentucky has it early. Louisville has it probably in the spring, but then credit John Calipari, man. He kept fighting. Over time, you start to realize that anybody that really kind of was locking in on Louisville as a done deal, it was far from it. And after a long winding road, John Calipari finally got his man. So when I look at reactions, a couple things stand out. One, first of all, credit old Coach Cal, okay? I know everybody wants to bury Coach Cal, and all he does is recruit. He doesn't win at the highest level, blah, 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 this and that. First of all, we've talked about it a million times. This guy this is year 14 for John Calipari. I would argue that, and this is independent of this kid's commitment, I would argue that in 12 of those years, he had a team good enough to win a national championship, okay? 12 of 14 years, he's had a team good enough to win a national championship. The only ones being, the year they made the NIT after the first national championship and probably the 2020, 2021 season in the middle of COVID. And so I bring it up because everybody wants to bury John Calipari. All he does is put teams on the court that are good enough to win a title. And I'll tell you, this recruitment wasn't easy, right? Back and forth. It would have been easy for him to back off. It would have been easy for him to wave the white flag when Kenny Payne got to Louisville. And instead, he kept fighting, battling. Obviously, getting Nike on your side to sign him as an NIL client was a big win for John Calipari. But listen, I just give him credit, man. Guy's 60-something years old. He is still fighting like he's 28 for the best players in the country. Like no stone unturned. He was in Camden the first day of the fall period when you could be on campus visiting players. And so I just give him a ton of credit for his effort that he put in. Another thing that comes to mind, credit to the assistant coaches, right? Because here's the bottom line. If you remember, and this is probably credit to Cal too, and Torres, all you do is say nice things about Cal. Well, criticize Cal for what you want. But after that disastrous 2020, 2021 season, Cal said everything has to change. That was the COVID year. Kentucky goes 9-15, 9-16, whatever the record was. But one of the changes that he made was he went out and completely shook up his coaching staff. Couple guys left, couple guys took other jobs, but he brought back in Orlando Antigua, his longtime right-hand man. And he brought in a guy named Chin Coleman from Illinois as well, 2 of the elite recruiters in all of college basketball. And so I bring it up. Why it matters is because you bring them in the spring of 2021. Okay. So the 2022 recruiting class, obviously did a great job. They had a guy, I won't name his name, that was committed, that was the number one player. He ends up going pro without playing a game. You have Casey Wallace, who's playing really well right now. But it was 2023 where those guys, those assistant coaches that you paid all that money to, you're either going to sink or swim. And not only did they swim by getting DJ Wagner, but this now closes out the number one class in America and one of the best classes in recent history. Now, look, I can't promise what they're going to do once they get there. Obviously, Kentucky won a national championship based on the backs of a one and done number one ranked freshman class. They had some veterans with them, right? Duke won a national championship with a number one ranked class the previous year, had some veterans with them. So I can't sit here and promise you anything, but this is as impressive of a group as any in recent memory, okay? So DJ Wagner in the 24/7 composite is the number one player in America. The number two player in America is a guy by the name of Justin Edwards, who's actually been on this podcast. Don't know how much you remember about Justin Edwards, but Justin Edwards is committed to Kentucky. Been on this podcast, we talked about it. The number 6 ranked player in America, Aaron Bradshaw, committed to Kentucky as of this morning, had not signed, but was obviously waiting for DJ Wagner is going to sign. You also have the number 9 ranked player in America, Robert Dillingham, a guard, committed as well. And Reed Shepard, the number 29 ranked player, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, committed also. So in total, for those of you who aren't great at math, we are talking about 4 of the top 10 players in America, including 3 of the top 6. You talk about a loaded recruiting class for John Calipari. This is one of the best ones he's ever put together in a career of putting together elite recruiting classes. Again, it doesn't promise anything, but as we've talked about on this show time and time and time again, there's a difference between signing a good class with a 5-star or 2 and then 4 stars and signing the types of classes like this where you have elite frontline NBA talent coming in and you have guys that can contribute in college basketball right away. I talk about it all the time, right? But in the NBA, I think we all understand that there is a difference between getting the number 1 pick in the NBA draft and getting like the 11th pick, right? Number 1, you get an Anthony Davis, a Zion Williamson, a Kyrie Irving, and some of these guys have had whatever kind of careers. They're all really good players, though. LeBron James, obviously. That's the difference between the number 1 player and then who was the number 11 player in last year's draft. Oh, we don't remember because it doesn't matter because they turn into a role player. And so I bring it up because in college basketball, it's no different. There's a difference between some of the classes that John Calipari has signed recently, where you have like the 8th ranked player and the 11th ranked player and the 26th ranked player and getting the elite of the elite. These are the kind of players that you can build a team around. You can build a Final Four team around, as we saw at Duke last season with Paolo Banchero and Trevor Keels and all those guys, some of the early Kentucky teams. And so I just give John Calipari a ton of credit here. Went out, revamped his staff 2 years ago, said we need to get back to recruiting the best of the best, and that's exactly what he did. This season, they once again have a team good enough to win a national championship with Oscar Tshiebwe, but I'll take it a step further. With this recruiting class and probably a couple returnees off this year's squad, that's going to be a team that is, again, in 2023, 2024, among the best in college basketball and good enough to win a national championship. Doesn't guarantee anything, but this is a huge day for John Calipari, a huge day for Kentucky basketball, as they have gotten a commitment from the number 1 player in America, DJ Wagner. And I'm telling you, they are going to start next year in the top 5, and they might have the best player in college basketball in 2023, 2024.